Let me ask you a question. Who was the NBA's leading scorer of the 1980s? Is it Bird, Magic, Adrian Dantley, Moses Malone? Nah, it's actually Alex English, who scored over 21,000 points during that decade. How's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and it's about time we talk about the story of Alex English, the most underrated scorer in NBA history. Before coming into the NBA, English went to college at the University of South Carolina. He had a decent college career, but it wasn't anything special as he didn't get many accolades or awards, so he wasn't projected to be a top draft pick. Fun fact, English actually graduated with a bachelor's degree in English. Well, that's pretty cool. Anyway, in the 1976 draft, English got selected with the 23rd overall pick by the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, at this time, the Bucks were in an awkward situation. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar demanded a trade to the Lakers 2 years prior, so they were rebuilding now. The team had a weird mix of young players like English, Junior Bridgman, and All-Star Brian Winters. English was a 6'7" small forward, but could not get many minutes in his rookie season because the Bucks had way too many players at the same position. In the year after, the Bucks also drafted future All-Star Marcus Johnson, and he would become their permanent starting small forward. Basically, English was the odd man out. In his first 2 seasons with Milwaukee, he only played about 15 minutes per game. He made it clear that he was upset with his role and thought he was a lot better than the amount of playing time he was getting. As a result, he left the Bucks after 2 seasons and signed with the Indiana Pacers in the summer of 1978. The Pacers at the time were also rebuilding, but they were looking for their starting small forward, and English fit that bill. In his first season as a Pacer, he averaged 16 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists per game in over 33 minutes. This was a great opportunity for English, as he hoped he could stay with the Pacers for a very long time and grow as a team together. Unfortunately, the Pacers did not feel the same way. Halfway through the following season, they would trade English to the Denver Nuggets. Looking back, it turned out to be one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history, as the Pacers got back George McGinnis, who would play only 2 more seasons before retiring. With the Nuggets, English saw his career take off. With him leading the way, the team played at a ridiculously fast pace, the fastest in the league by far. This was the perfect situation for him to really make the most of his talent. He was always known as a fast, slashing run-and-gun player, so this system greatly benefited his style. In his first full season with the Nuggets, he averaged nearly 24 points per game, way higher than any of his previous seasons. Between 1981 and 1989, he became an 8-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, and even led the league in points per game for 1 season. Although known as primarily a scorer, English did a bit of everything. For a small forward, he was always a great rebounder, even back in college. In some years, he even averaged over 3 offensive rebounds per game, which is insane. There's no small forward today who even comes close to that number. English also developed into a solid playmaker and became one of the best offensive players the NBA has ever seen. However, despite all of his individual success, the Nuggets didn't have much team success. In the 11 seasons that English was there, they only won more than 50 games twice, got swept in the first round 3 different times, and made the conference finals only once, and that was in 1985. The big problem with the team was that, even though they were always at the top in offensive efficiency, they were almost always at the bottom defensively. This team was a glass cannon. They just didn't care about defense at all, and that's why they ended up with so many seasons where they only hovered around 40 wins. Offensively, they were just as dominant as the Showtime Lakers, but defensively, they looked like a lottery team. In fact, if you take a look at the highest scoring games in NBA history, you'd see so many games that involve these Denver Nuggets. The highest scoring game ever was on December 13th, 1983 between the Pistons and Nuggets, in which the final score was 186 to 184. Then you had other games that were like 160 to 150 or 170 to 140. These games didn't even go into overtime, and the Nuggets lost in most of them. Anyway, English had his most successful playoff run in 1985. The Nuggets this year had an improved defense and their best team during that era. This was mainly because they got rid of Kiki Vandeweghe, who was an amazing scorer, even averaging over 29 points per game in the previous season. But he was beyond awful defensively. They traded Vandeweghe to Portland for Fat Lever, a brilliant floor general and a triple-double machine who was also a great perimeter defender. They also got Calvin Nat from Portland, a dynamic power forward who complemented English very well. This trade launched the Nuggets into a true contender. In their first season together, they won 52 games and reached the Western Conference Finals, where they would eventually lose to the Lakers. English had his best playoff run ever, averaging over 30 points per game on 54% from the field and 89% at the line. Unfortunately, English and the Nuggets would never reach the same playoff success again. The next few years saw a couple of losses in the second round, and English started to slowly fall off. What's crazy is that he was still putting up 26.5 points per game at the age of 35. Only one other player in NBA history has averaged over 25 points per game at or over the age of 35. That was Karl Malone. English was also incredibly durable, playing 80-plus games in 12 of his 15 seasons. In 1990, he wanted to retire as a Denver Nuggets and spend his last season there, but they didn't want to re-sign him, which kinda upset him. It was a strange and tense situation between him and the Nuggets, but yeah, they just didn't want to keep him. He felt like he deserved better than that and wanted to go out with more respect. He said, "I had envisioned that I would go out like Dan Issel and Julius Erving, that I would make the trip around the league and get to say goodbye to all the people in all different cities. Unfortunately, there's not many players that can decide how their career is going to end." Instead, English spent his final season playing in Dallas and quietly retired from the NBA in 1991. The career of Alex English was an interesting one. He holds a ridiculous number of Denver's franchise records, which includes games played, minutes played, field goals made and attempted, total points, assists, turnovers. It's a pretty long list. But the thing is, not many people give him the credit he deserves. In an interview from 2017, English was surprised the Nuggets even considered spending a night celebrating his NBA career. He said, "Look at different teams, look at their history and the people that were important to their organizations. A lot of the players, say for instance with the Atlanta Hawks, you think Dominique Wilkins. The Boston Celtics, you think Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, and McHale. I have not had that kind of relationship with the Nuggets." When you think about it, it's true. When people think of the Denver Nuggets, very few would immediately think of Alex English. I guess part of it had to do with him not winning any titles, and his personality was rather bland. For his entire career, he was quiet, he was reserved, he never said anything controversial and never did anything too exciting. But he's still the greatest Denver Nuggets of all time. That's all, folks. That sums up the story of Alex English, the most underrated scorer in NBA history. Let me know your thoughts and what player today do you think is a good comparison. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.